Finally tonight, we thought we'd address kindness, civility, and politics, which don't seem to be mentioned in the same sentence much these days.
On October 6, 2019, the Green Bay Packers played the Dallas Cowboys. In attendance, seated right next to one another, were Ellen DeGeneres and President George W. Bush. And this threw a lot of people off.
Why is a gay Hollywood liberal sitting next to a conservative Republican president? Didn't even notice I'm holding the brand new iPhone 11.
It was a mystery to many why they were getting along so well, and many argued that perhaps they should not have gotten along so well. But why? Why were so many people bothered by their camaraderie? Well, there are actually two ways of viewing this, and because of that, a lot of people wound up talking over the heads of those on the other side of the debate.
How about we get out of people's lives?
Newsflash, people can be friends with different political ideologies, but we're so divided as a nation right now that something like that makes news.
Exactly.
This was the argument made in defense of Ellen's kindness towards George W. Bush. And this was the argument that was challenged by those like Mark Ruffalo, who argued that the notion of being kind toward the former president was not an option, let alone a good one, because of injustices that occurred during his administration.
Now that's a good comment.
So Mark Ruffalo swung me. You don't get friendship, you don't get smiles, you don't get to be friends with people if you're that kind of monster and never even had the decency to apologize.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between these points of view? And why did a lot of arguments fail to address the other side's arguments? Simply put, one side based their arguments on beliefs, and the other side based their arguments on actions.
I'm friends with George Bush. In fact, I'm friends with a lot of people who don't share the same beliefs that I have. But just because I don't agree with someone on everything doesn't mean that I'm not going to be friends with them. When I say be kind to one another, I don't mean only the people that think the same way that you do. I mean be kind to everyone. Doesn't matter.
The idea behind this line of reasoning is that a person's thoughts and beliefs should not decide whether or not you are kind to them. Kindness should not be determined by what you stand for or your background. You shouldn't have to think the same way as another person to befriend them.
How many of us have friends who don't share our politics or beliefs? And if we don't, why not?
But those on the other side of this debate didn't object to Ellen's kindness because of George Bush's beliefs, not necessarily anyway. The argument on the other side objected to Ellen's kindness because of what George Bush had done during his presidency. The idea behind this line of reasoning is that a person's actions should decide whether or not you're kind to them. It depends on what they've done. If somebody does harm to others, for instance, that action should forfeit whatever kindness we would have given to them otherwise. Essentially, you can't be friends, or you shouldn't be friends, with someone who has done unethical or immoral deeds. That's the idea, and that's the reason why the arguments on each side of this debate didn't quite address each other. One side focused on beliefs, the other side focused on actions.
My biggest issue with what Ellen said is that she didn't come out and defend why you should be able to be friends with someone who has done these things. She came out and defended why you should be friends with people who disagree with you, and that's not the issue.
You could, and perhaps you do, agree with everything written on this notepad. You can argue that a person's beliefs won't decide whether or not you're kind to them, but that their actions will. Just as an example, if you have a friend who believes that a wife should stay at home and that the husband should be the sole breadwinner, you may continue being their friend even if you don't agree with that. However, if you discover one day that that same friend hits their wife, you may abandon that friendship. And not because you don't agree with what they think, but because you object to what they have done. It's a tough debate to have because even when you get both sides straightened out, you still have to admit that both arguments ultimately come down to a judgment call. Should you be friends with anyone, completely regardless of what they believe? Well, that's for you to decide. Maybe you would draw a line somewhere. bigoted beliefs, uninformed beliefs, the belief that Crocs are appropriate to wear at a public event, you get to draw that line wherever you want. And the same goes for the other argument. How harmful or immoral of an action does someone need to take to lose your friendship? A drinking problem? Stealing from you or others? Starting a war? Again, you get to draw that line wherever you think it belongs. So the next time you hear someone argue either for or against kindness towards a particular person, take a moment to consider why they are making that argument, so that your counter-argument hopefully doesn't go over their head.
Thanks, President Bush and Laura, for a Sunday afternoon that was so fun. By the way, you owe me $6 for the nachos.
So what's your opinion of this particular situation? You think it's appropriate for Ellen to be friends with Bush, or do you think it's inappropriate? By all means, make your arguments known in the comments down below. And thanks for watching this video today.